People are constantly raising the bar.
Sacrifices need to be made.
What would you guys say are your biggest weaknesses?
You or your enemy right now?
Is success a lie?
Just a fucking podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to the Hypertrophy Hustle Show. That is probably the first time I've ever said that intro, just because I quickly I rebranded recently. So today I'm talking to Emma Story-Gordon. She is sort of an online coach, online fitness writer, and makes amazing Instagram stories, posts, videos, etc. So, Emma, how did you get into this? How did you sort of get to where you are today? And what were the sort of events that made this all happen?
Hello. Well, thank you for having me on, first of all.
My pleasure.
So I'll start with I don't want to go too far back, but my undergraduate degree was sports science. And in my last year of sports science, I got really interested in how exercise can impact health as opposed to performance. And that sort of led me on to work in diabetes research after that, and a little bit of cardiovascular disease and diabetes research, which I did for a period of time, and then it kind of got a bit too lab-based for me, and I missed the practical aspect. So I kind of brushed over this, but all throughout university, or the last couple of years, and then for a year after, I was a personal trainer. So I sort of did that alongside things. And I've always had this... I guess it started as just like a Facebook page where I would post like things that I found interesting, really. So throughout my sports science degree as well. And I kept that up going through working in academia a little bit. And I thought that's what I really wanted to do, was go and get my PhD and continue in research. But I found that I really missed like the practical side and being a personal trainer and actually getting to do exercise with people, or getting people to do exercise rather. So I wanted to sort of marry the two together, so my knowledge in disease states and my experience with exercise. And my whole idea was a sort of what we term in the UK like a GP referral type scheme, where people who maybe have something like type 2 diabetes, who would benefit hugely from exercising, can be referred to you and you can basically help treat them. But what I quickly found was that it's very hard to sell exercise to someone who doesn't like exercise. And there was a slight flaw in my business plan there. And also there's just a lot of barriers up to work with these people. And I began to find it much more rewarding to work with people who were already motivated to change. So someone who has decided they want to change and then comes to you, and then you can help them on their journey. And really, that is what I've kind of figured out is how it has to be. That motivation has to come from the individual. You can't really push it on them. And I often get questions from people, someone will maybe message me saying, oh, my dad's diabetic, like he doesn't like exercise, doesn't like what can I do to get him to exercise? I'm always moaning at him, blah, blah, blah. And really, like, they have to find that motivation themselves. And actually, sometimes your son or your wife moaning at you to do it almost makes you not want to do it, or really anyone moaning at you to do it. So it kind of has to come from you. But I guess that's sort of my background, and why I take a bit of a more sciencey approach than maybe some fitness professionals do. And that's why my Instagram's full of sort of geeky stuff, because that's kind of what I find interesting.
Well, I think it's one of my favorite lenses to approach it from. It's sort of one of the... I kind of can't see why people don't approach it from that lens. I think it's a more difficult lens to approach it from, but you really can't beat evidence-based. Like, maybe it's not as sexy, maybe you can't sell it as easy, and it's not as easy to talk about. But it's like, at the end of the day, there's reasons we need evidence. And I think that's the cool thing about it. One thing that I thought was quite interesting was the whole sort of disease state. It's like, with that, and in terms of exercise, I've experienced it quite a lot in terms of podiatry. It's like, as a podiatrist, you will treat people who have diabetes, you will treat people who have rheumatoid arthritis, all these different conditions. And I've found the thing that's almost shocking for me is our lack of knowledge surrounding calories, surrounding resistance training, or surrounding any form of, to what seems to me be like a useful intervention to sort of stop it where it starts. So instead of sort of finding it 8 years down the track and then sort of managing the symptoms, it sort of feels as though it starts too late. And is there anything in terms of that you found with like diabetes and with all that sort of stuff, was there anything that you found that was like, this is sort of futile? And does that sort of fuel this transition?
Well, one thing that sort of touches on what you're saying there is that I had this discussion with my friend who's a GP, and I sort of said, like, I wish, what I really wanted to do initially, at least, was work with this population and blah, blah, blah. And I was sort of saying, I wouldn't say I feel like a sellout at all, but I guess I kind of insinuated that a little bit. And he said that actually what you're doing now is potentially even more important because prevention is better than a cure. And actually, if you're getting people active before they're in that state, then they may never get in that state. And actually, that's what we should be focusing on. Not that we should say, these people, there's no hope for them. There's a huge amount you can do. And there's a huge amount that exercise can do for your health, even if you're in quite a poor state of health. But he did make a really good point, that was that actually prevention is always going to be better than a cure, and you shouldn't feel like just because it was really hard to work with that population, or you haven't been able to do it in the way that maybe you first had visualized that you would, that doesn't mean that you're not making a difference now.
I think that's the interesting thing. It's like, it seems to me like my profession, it seems messed up. It's like we have this fantastic university, great, like amazing for exercise science, but we skip the bit about preventing it. It's sort of like, we'll give them some sort of education, but it seems as though for something like diabetes, right, it feels, from what I've seen, and correct me if you think I'm wrong here or anything, but it feels as though a lot of it can be combated just through literally diet and exercise. Like, that's 99% of it. That's what it feels like. There's not much else. And it feels like that's the same for 90% of the problems in health nowadays. It's like, it feels like it starts here, but people ignore this. Like, we had a slide on treating obesity in my university, and this is a good university. This is where Eric Helms and Brett Contreras did their PhDs. So it's a good university for exercise science. But they didn't mention calories on the slide about treating obesity. And it's like, okay, I get you can't tell someone calories in, calories out, but we can't mention what a calorie is? Like, come on, that seems
that is the foundation.
It seems fundamental.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess what you're saying about, I just want to quickly make the differentiation between type 1 and type 2 diabetes, and that there are actually a couple of other forms of diabetes. But we're really talking about type 2 diabetes here when we talk about prevention, because obviously type 1 you're usually born with, or at least it's an autoimmune disease. So it's a bit different. But the majority of people who have diabetes are type 2 diabetics, and that's what is...
it's like 95%.
Yeah, and that's what's related to lifestyle. And like you're saying, you can treat that with lifestyle. You don't need to be taking medications. And actually the sort of first line medication defense that you would get is called metformin, which is probably the most popular diabetic drug. And it basically mimics the effects of exercise. And you think, what about exercise?
I've never thought of it that way. That is crazy.
Yeah.
I wish someone would say that to my lecturers. That is fucking... I've never heard of it. It did cut out when you said that, but did you say metformin?
Yeah, metformin is... People describe it as an exercise mimetic because it mimics the effects of exercise on muscle tissue and various other sort of... the way that glucose can be transported into the cell.
Sheesh, that's actually pretty powerful. Like, I've thought about this topic has been like it's been like a huge thing in my life for the last year. It's sort of the reason I'm doing exercise science after podiatry, because it's like I feel as though we can't solve it here, but it's literally like, it seems as though everything else in the 21st century as a human seems to be getting pretty good. Like, everyone's pretty happy apart from a few things, some things are bad, but it seems as though the main thing that's getting really bad is health. And it seems as though some people are hyper healthy and some people are just hyper unhealthy. So it's like, why is there such a massive divide? Can't we just, give everyone a little dose of health?
Yeah, and I think...
And it feels as though...
I don't know if it's fueling it, but part of it is that we're living longer because medicines are better, but we seem to be living longer in poor health. Like, and I don't know about you, but I would rather live, like, a really healthy life to, like, 70 than live to 90, but the last 20 years of my life just be a total burden to everyone, and like so I'm much more about
it's kind of like why not
living like a enjoyable shorter life than a really long
Yeah. In your sort of studies, did you find, would you say, in terms of the effect that exercise has on people, would you say, is there something, I guess, unique about resistance training? Is there a reason why it seems to make such huge changes in a vast majority of people? And maybe it's just because it shows body compositionally, but it's like, it seems to me like I don't see many people having this massive change through exercise, through doing something like jogging or something. It seems to be like when someone starts resistance training and they do that for a year, 4 days a week, it's like that's massive. Mm-hmm. But like running every day for a year doesn't seem to make the same sort of difference.
I would say it really depends on the population. So if you look at someone who is, like we've been talking about, sort of type 2 diabetic, so potentially someone who's pretty overweight, pretty inactive, honestly doing anything, like there's been studies that have shown amazing results from walking every day. So when you're really sedentary, doing anything is going to give you amazing benefits. But you're right, resistance training seems to offer like pretty amazing but also additional benefits to your more traditional exercise or activity levels, really. And one of the key benefits for diabetics anyway is that it will, stimulating your muscle will stimulate the GLUT4 translocators or transporters to the surface of the muscle, which helps bring in glucose. So it increases insulin sensitivity. And I think that's one of the key benefits for type 2 diabetics, but also for anyone really, because we're all on that spectrum of insulin sensitivity. So that's one of the benefits it offers. And I think something that, I think you were possibly going to ask me this, but it was something about what's one of the things that, I can't remember now. What was your first question for me?
What aspects of fitness aren't talked about enough?
So this is exactly that. For me, it's the benefits that exercise can do to your health, regardless of weight loss. So I think so many people have in their head, like, why are you going to the gym? You're not losing any weight. Or why do you bother doing that? You've not lost any body fat. Honestly, even if you didn't lose any body fat, you were doing yourself the world of good. And in all likelihood, you will lose some body fat or you will improve your body composition. Yeah. But even if you didn't, like, this is still a very good thing to do. And I think a lot of people forget that. And more in the general population, it's like, I don't know, I could just imagine really demoralizing, like, a co-worker being like, oh, you've been going to the gym 3 times a week, you've not lost any weight, why don't you just give up? And that's when people do give up. So they're like, oh, okay, you can't. You can't. And I think it's hard because you cannot physically see these differences. I mean, sometimes you can with diabetics, because it's quite interesting. Say a diabetic is at the stage where they need to take insulin, they might see that they can reduce their insulin because they've been doing exercise, which is a really cool thing to see, and you can monitor things like that. But for sort of a general population, it's quite hard to see the benefits, even though you might feel them, and people always want that like tangible result. That's why people are so obsessed with the scale weight, is that they want to be able to see a difference.
And I think it's quite a dangerous thing, like the whole scale weight. It's like, for instance, if I had a dude who I was going to get him jacked, and I wanted to get him reasonably jacked as fast as possible, I would probably, or just get him in better shape, or just not even get him jacked as fast as possible, just get him in shape that he likes. I would just say, okay, eat exactly sort of what you're eating now, or try and eat the same amount of calories, but just sit there. And maybe this is a terrible approach, but it's just, like, I haven't trained anyone yet, so maybe this doesn't work in practice, but it's like, if you just say if he weighs 90 kilos and he wants to be lower, just say, okay, if you sit there, and just explaining the concept that, like, if you sit at 90 kilos and you stay at 90 kilos, but you start lifting weights, you'll gain muscle, lose fat, and you'll just, there's no way that's not good. Like, that's obviously a good thing. And it's just something like that. It's like, that's the thing where, okay, scale weight's not going down, but maybe you're needing more calories because you're gaining muscle. It's just like, maybe that's where the calories are going. So is that such a bad thing? I would say probably not. Like, and that's the thing. It feels as though resistance training seems to be, I guess, but I mean, then there is the other side where people view it as like on this holy pedestal, and then nothing can sort of come up to it. And I think you sort of touched on before, it's like literally anything's good.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. The only time it's not good is if maybe if you're doing a ton of exercise already and then you add in more exercise. Probably like, maybe that's a bit dangerous. But
yeah, you do want to sort of prioritize what you should be doing. But yeah, if you're in a position where you're going from like, I think a lot of people put a barrier up to exercises in, oh yeah, I want to start exercise, but I don't know what to do because this article told me that HIIT training's the best. This article told me that I should be doing resistance training, and this one, but endurance training is good for my heart, so what should I do? And then they end up doing nothing. And you're like, anything you enjoy doing. Do you know what? Zumba's great if that's going to get you moving. So I think in that situation, anything. If you've got maybe more specific goals, look at other things. But again, it's this whole, should I be doing resistance training or cardio? You're an idiot if you just stick to one. Like any coach that's telling you resistance training is the only thing you need to do, you don't need to do anything else at all, just do that all the time, that'll get you the best results. Why would you stick to one method when you can get the benefits of all the methods? So any good coach is going to put in maybe like a little bit of resistance training, a little bit of HIIT, maybe some cardio as well, and kind of fit it in around what they enjoy.
I mean, there's a lot of bodybuilding coaches who seem to... I mean, I'm definitely bodybuilding style, but I mean, there's a lot of people in bodybuilding that I'm like, no, I don't associate with them, and there's a lot of people I'm like, yeah, they're great. Like, for instance, Steve, Revive Stronger, fantastic. Like, he has an amazing approach. He's just smart dude. He's my coach, so it's like...
I see.
Very, very good.
See.
Like,
Steve's great.
like 3DMJ. All that, those people are just like, those people, fantastic. But then there's a lot of people in bodybuilding that will sort of skip things and they'll sort of say, no. I mean, there's obviously... I assume, have you observed sort of British bodybuilding a little bit? Because you can sort of see there's two camps. And I mean, I just talked about this with Steve in the last episode, which was interesting. And it was one of the questions I wanted to ask you. It was sort of, if you had to put yourself, I guess, in a camp or an approach, or sort of...
There.
No worries. So if you had to put yourself in a camp or an approach, or how would you define your general approach, and what sort of methods would that be? What sort of things would that be? Where would you sort of put yourself on the spectrum from, generally there's like the sort of 3DMJ, Steve Hall, sort of, they like reps in reserve, shouldn't always go to failure, and then they sort of rely on evidence-based, and then I won't mention names on the other side, but then there's more like intensity, work hard, blah, 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 and then there's other methods that I can't even comprehend yet because I haven't gone deep enough there, and this is probably where I think you more are, is more general health, actually aspiring for that general health, and that's something I'm struggling to comprehend because I've only listened to the bodybuilders, and it's like all I've cared about. I mean, this podcast is called the Hypertrophy Hustle Show, so it's like literally all I pretty much care about in terms of fitness is hypertrophy. So I mean, not the best for everyone, obviously. Like, that's not the best metric to pursue all the time, I don't think. I think it's a great metric, even for health, but it's like, it's just not... for most people, it's
absolutely,
not to...
but it's not even that it is or isn't a great metric for health. It's just some people being more interested in it than others, and some people literally just want to lose their body fat, and they might want to put a bit of muscle, but they're not too bothered about it. I don't like to tie myself to an approach, mainly because I work with, I've spoken mostly about health and disease population here, but I actually only have maybe 8 clients that would fit into that category at the moment. The majority of people I work with are women looking to lose body fat, and then I've maybe got another 8 to 10 who are sort of more on the extreme end who really want to build a lot of muscle. And my approach for all of them is completely different, and actually my coaching style for all of them is completely different. So I might be pretty hard and brutal on someone who has said that they want to build as much muscle mass as possible. I'm if they're slacking in training, or if I don't think they're sticking to their diet or whatever, I could be quite brutal with that. Whereas my lifestyle change client who just needs to make a few lifestyle changes and maybe went off their diet on the weekend, they need a completely different approach, and I'm not going to be maybe as harsh with them because they don't need pushed to the same level because they don't have the same kind of goals. So I very much change my approach given the individual I'm working with, but not just my approach, but almost my coaching style completely as well. Yeah.
How do you go about learning how much, I guess force to use with clients? Because, like, for instance, I'm not coaching until November. That's when I'm aiming to sort of start, and it's everything sort of getting set up now. But I've sort of coached friends and sort of pushed people along, and people obviously throughout my, like, when I got into fitness, people started asking, oh, hey, can you help me with this, that, and this? And then I've noticed with certain people, I mean, I would always take the sort of very hard approach, like, okay, no, do this. And I mean, for a long time, it was very like, no, this is the correct way. And I didn't see the black and white between it and sort of see the gray areas where it's like, okay, well, this person, they might be more adherent to this, or they might work better with that. And how do you sort of go about identifying how much force to use with a particular client?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I would say most of it comes down to experience, but also getting to know your client. So it's not enough just to have them fill out a questionnaire and it's like their metrics of, oh, this is my weight, this is my height, blah, blah, blah. And actually at the start, you kind of have to just do that. And then maybe the first month of coaching them is kind of getting to know them. And I mean, you work with Steve, so I'm sure, have you worked with him for a period of time now?
Yeah, well, we knew each other before, like we'd done 2 podcasts.
Okay,
so,
so you kind of knew each other already.
But
a lot of the time for me with clients, like our first month is a bit of me getting to know them a little bit as well. And then I can see how hard to push them. And you know, some clients I've worked with for years and I know exactly like when to push them and when to be like, maybe we just take a week of easy here, or I know what you're, you know, it's getting, and the way that you I'm sure you speak to Steve about like, oh, I've got exams this week or this month, like I'll do my best, but maybe things aren't going to be as spot on. And then you know you've got other periods of time where actually you want to absolutely smash it and you don't want any excuses. And it is very different. Like I've prepped a few people for bodybuilding shows, and when I'm doing that, I'm very I don't give out a lot of compliments. Like I will only say when they're ready. However, if I've got someone who's like wanting to feel body confident and look good in a bikini, like every little step I'm like, oh, you look absolutely brilliant, like you must feel so much better. They're telling me about how their friends have, you know, been complimenting on their new physique and how much more confident they feel. That's amazing. That's not what you need for bodybuilding though. And it's completely different. Like, I was speaking to someone on the podcast we were doing last night, and he was talking about one of his clients who's competing, but you know, I don't even know how to. So she's lost a lot of weight and has done amazing, like probably more impressive than most people getting up there absolutely shredded. But she's not ready for a bodybuilding show, and I think people often forget that. It's like, oh, you've had a great transformation, doesn't mean you should step on stage. Like that's a sport.
100%.
It's completely different than just getting in good shape. That there's a difference there, and I think that has to be known, and it kind of
and I think it's a difficult thing to know, because until you like truly understand that, it's like when you look at how 3DMJ approaches comp prep, it's like they'll basically get ready for years. It's like they're preparing themselves and actually making sure that they have enough muscle. And then it takes like 50 weeks to get that shredded, or whatever, because they do first cut, then maintenance phase, and second cut. And it's like, you know, that is not the kind of thing that most people should even, like, it's the thing most people won't even enjoy. So it's like, is that trade-off sort of worth it? One thing that I would really like to touch on is, this is a population that I am almost scared to coach, because I barely know. Like, the only experience I've had with this is my mum. Like, she used to be a pre-diabetic, and I tried to get her in the gym doing resistance training like a year ago. Didn't really work. I was sort of like, oh, she doesn't like lifting weights. What do I do? I was stuck because I let it to literally all I did. And then I was like, okay, pulled her out for a bit, and then sort of prompted her into running. And now she'll go for a little 10, 20-minute jog every day. And it's like, for her, that took her from pre-diabetic to fine. So, like, that's the cool thing. And that was what you were talking about before. It's like
amazing.
Adherence and sort of, it was so cool. It was like, oh my gosh, I never thought I'd ever get her actually into doing fitness, and that she would actually be adherent to it. But she likes it. Like, it's just a nice, fun thing to do. But she doesn't want to be stuck in the gym pretending she's a powerlifter.
Yeah, and my mum's exactly the same. Like, I try and get her to go to the gym. I know it's good for, as our parents age and things, going through the menopause. Like,
yes.
I know that doing some resistance training would be good for her bone mineral density, but she doesn't like doing that. She wants to be outside. She wants to go for runs, and
that's the thing.
Yeah.
And then I hope, I mean, we're hopefully going to get a gym in the garage, and she's very hyped about that. So hopefully we can get some of it going there, because that would be cool. But we'll see how we go. But when it comes to the sort of, and I mean, it's a dangerous, not dangerous, it's a scary population from my point of view, because it's like, oh my gosh, they're so, like, I'm talking about the female population that want to lose body fat. I mean, obviously you can't stereotype people, but it seems as though many of them are scared of being big, and then they lift weights, they're scared of getting bulky, and then they want to lose body fat, but not too much body fat, and it's very like not they don't want to sort of swing to any extremes.
Yeah, girls don't know what they want, and then one day they'll be like, I want to be the strongest girl in the world, and the next day they'll be like, no, I want to be a Victoria's Secrets model, and then they're like, no, I want to be curvy, and I want a big bum, but I don't want big arms, I just want big bum, that's it. And how do I spot reduced fat on my stomach? That's what I get every day. But you kind of
how
just
do you go about sort of coaching?
The approach I take, which I think has worked really well with this population, which is kind of like my main client base, is taking a really like scientific but almost overly, not to overcomplicate it, but to really understand what's happening, which helps to take the emotion away from it. So, and I don't even mean like not overcomplicating it at all, not talking about like ridiculous energy systems and things like that, but more just like, look, let's take a step back and like, what actually is fat? Fat is a store of energy, and if you've eaten too much, you will store more of that energy. Now, if we want to get rid of that fat, we just have to either eat a little more, less, or move a little more. And really, like, this may seem like a bit like minutiae to some people, but you are not fat. You simply have some fat. I think like really getting your head around that for a lot of women is really important, because actually that belief of, if you speak about yourself like, oh, I am fat, that's not changeable. That's like a fixed mindset. Whereas if you're like, I have some fat, yeah, okay, we all have some fat. You've got a little bit more than what you want to have. That's fine. It doesn't change you as a person. But we can change that if you decide you want to change that, and this is how we would do it. And I think starting from a place of that, so that people really like understand what they're doing and there's less emotion involved, it's just quite logical and like, okay, well, that makes sense. I've got too much energy, I'm going to use some. Like, it is as simple as that. But also going into things like with scale weight, you'll get a lot of people or a lot of coaches who even maybe don't quite understand, or they don't want to explain it. So they're like, oh, the scales don't measure fat loss very well, just ignore them, which isn't really quite true. It's just that there are, on an acute level, there will always be fluctuations, but understanding what these are. So I always like to use the example of, like, here in the UK, it's just been a bank holiday. So we've had like a long weekend, and some people will have put on about 5 pounds over the weekend because it's been quite sunny here and you have barbecues and you drink too much, etc., etc. That 5 pounds is not body fat. Like, it cannot be. And if you've overeaten, some of it might be, but if you were going to store 5 pounds of body fat over the weekend, you would have had to eat in excess of 20,000 calories. Realistically, you haven't done that. You might have eaten, let's say you've eaten 5,000 extra calories, which would be a lot, on top of your maintenance. You've really gone for it and you've like completely had the weekend off. That you've still not stored that much. So if you just get back on track straight away, don't over restrict, don't get into that starvation, binge starve cycle type thing where you're over restricting and then overindulging. Just get straight back on track, and I guarantee you by the end of the week your weight will have come down again. And it always has. But I think a lot of people get into that panic of, oh my God, I put on 5 pounds of fat, I'm going to just try and eat 800 calories for the rest of the week. And then by the time the weekend comes, they're like, oh, I'm like so over restricted, I'm just going to eat all the ice cream in the world. And the same sort of cycle happens again and again.
Yeah, it seems to be quite common, that sort of, and I mean, I think, I'm sort of figuring out how to phrase this. It's like, I'll find there'll be girls in my life who will say, like, oh no, I ate this, and then they'll say the thing about eating nothing, but it's like, I don't know if they actually are going to do that, and it's sort of knowing whether that's the case. And I'm assuming maybe it's different when they're the coach, because the coach will sort of say, no, this is exactly what's going on. Hold up.
Yeah.
Stop.
Exactly.
You know, so do you find, are those destructive behaviors very common, or are they not that common? Or how often do you think, like, what sort of amount of people do you find that it's sort of like, okay, that could be an eating disorder, that is something we actually need to change, these are bad habits? Or is it sort of like most people have bad habits, is it a spectrum, or how do you figure out
it's definitely
where or what amount of bad
yeah,
it is?
it's definitely on a spectrum. And if anyone sort of worries me to that extent, I do always refer out, because I'm definitely not qualified to work with that population. And I think that's a really important thing, just to say that it's okay for coaches to do as well. To say, actually, I think maybe dieting's not the best thing for you at the moment, and maybe actually we should be focusing on repairing a relationship with food. But what tends to happen is that you're right. People are like, oh, you know, I only eat 1,000 calories a day, and you can look at them and you're like you obviously don't. And actually, someone had screenshotted me a tweet the other day, and it was from a woman who was sort of claiming that her doctor was like fattest or fatophobic or whatever. I don't know, but she'd said that he told her that she needs to eat less without asking how much she was eating, as if like he didn't know. And it's like, you're walking around like, there's no other way you can be overweight than we know how much you're eating. So, if someone's like, oh, you know, I only eat 1,000 calories a day, but they're overweight, like, you don't. And that's not I don't know. I don't know
and
how
I think
to
people
say
give that like that statement a lot of hate, and especially like, did you see the interview with Joe Rogan, Stephen Guyenet, and Gary Taubes? There were some very, very good references in there. On Stefan's part. Stefan. He gave some very good references on sort of basically everything around how macros and calories work. And he was basically arguing for pretty much what evidence-based fitness does around controlling weight. And that was the cool thing. It's like, with the doctor's statement, right? It's like, oh, you probably need to eat less. Mm-hmm. Even if by some freak thing it was 1,000 calories, which obviously isn't the case. If the person's obese, still works. Like, it's probably still the case. But I mean, it's literally never going to be 1,000 calories.
No, because if you're obese, your BMR is going to be more than that on its own. And I guess that's the other sort of misconception around that as well, is that, oh, you know, I've got a slow metabolism, or that's often the argument. But actually, people who weigh more will have a higher metabolism, or they will burn more calories to maintain their weight. So actually, they can eat more and still lose weight. So they're in actually quite a very good position to start losing weight. But I think there can be a bit too much like pussyfooting around the topic, and I think people don't like to be told that, but it's not even like a judgment thing or anything. Like kind of what I was saying before about like, you've got some extra energy. It says nothing about who you are. It just means maybe you need to move a little bit more or eat a little bit less, and for your health, that's important. And I think there's this whole the health at any size movement and things. And do you know what? No, like, I could not care if you want to be overweight. I don't care. In terms of it, like, I think people think, oh, it's how people look or anything. It's got nothing to do with that. If you like being overweight, fine, except that it impacts your health, and that's where the issue is. None of the other things are an issue. If you like being a bigger person, but make sure you're active with it, because otherwise it's going to impact your health, and that's like never going to be a good thing in the long run. And I think another thing that they claim in the health at any size movement is that you can be fit and overweight, and it's technically true, but I really feel that it's a ticking time bomb. Like, it's this transient period where actually you haven't developed type 2 diabetes yet, and you haven't,
But it's like you're running like away from like a really fast train and you're only just faster than the
Yeah.
train or something. It's like, okay, if you fall over, the train hits you. Like, come on, like, and it's I don't know. I can't understand the argument. I get when you're in that place and you want to sort of, I mean, it's a hard topic to talk about because there's a lot of political stuff around it right now. But it's like, if someone's overweight, it's obviously bad for you, and it's just like, people don't. I remember when I was a skinny kid, like I was 6 foot 52 kilos, absolutely tiny, like I was minuscule, and then people would always have no issue telling me that I was skinny. They'd be like, oh haha, they thought it was a funny comment, right? They thought it was something just interesting about me, you know, like, and I mean, I wouldn't say I had major body image issues, like it didn't bother me that much. But it's like if you do it about fat people, then it's an issue, and if you do it, it's just very, it's interesting. But I think it's weird because either one's not great.
Oh yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
I mean,
and that's the other argument that they try to use is that, oh, but being too skinny is unhealthy as well. And you're like, yeah, of course. Like, either end of the
shit.
spectrum is like absolutely not a good thing.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the middle. And we're not saying you have to have a six-pack and look like a fitness model. Like, actually, that's probably detrimental in itself. But we're saying this huge grey area in the middle where you're not obese, but you're also not extremely skinny. There would be a good place to be sitting.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, it's very, I don't know, the politics of it really annoys me because it's just like, if it wasn't detrimental, it would be fine. If people admitted the fact, and it's just when they lie, it's like, why would you lie? Like, come on, seriously, this is like the biggest problem facing humanity's health. Like, obesity pretty much the worst thing. Like, mental health's kind of bad, but like, to me, it just doesn't compare.
Yeah, well, apparently,
Like,
I read a stat and it was like 1 in 5 deaths worldwide can be linked to like obesity-related conditions, which is like terrifying.
Exactly, and it's like, to me, it seems terrible. And then if they argue something about mental health being worse, it's like, okay, bad mental health causes that as well. Like, there's this whole thing we covered in class a while ago, is like a long-term condition leads to obesity, but it also leads to depression. But depression leads to a long-term condition and obesity.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just like, there's no argument for it health-wise.
Yeah, and you will
kind of
feel better if you know, because you're investing in yourself. You can be proud of the fact that you're making a change and you're trying to make yourself better. And actually, this is another big thing that I'm quite passionate about, is especially people who don't like exercise or who aren't into fitness and have decided to make a change and have come to you for help. Like, I don't think personal trainers in general, and because we see it so often, you almost become a bit less sensitive to it. But that is absolutely massive. For anyone to be like, okay, actually, I want to make a change, like, that's huge. And it's one of the reasons I hate when people are sort of, I don't know, diss like other diets. Like, I don't know, do you get Slimming World over there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
No.
Slimming World, or Weight Watchers?
Yeah, we have Weight Watchers.
So it's not.
And I
it's
mean,
not a
there's a lot of
perfect-
disrespect.
yeah,
Like,
it's not a perfect diet.
yeah, like even keto as well. Like, when one of my friends went on keto a while ago, and people were sort of making jokes like, ha ha, and it's like, okay, but it worked. And it's like, it's working. She's adherent to it. What's the issue? I can't see an issue there. Like, okay, maybe for bodybuilding it's not amazing. Cool, whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
Or even the
you know,
fact
it
of,
is what it
like,
is.
yeah, do you know what? Weight Watchers isn't the best thing. Keto, probably too restrictive. But the fact that they've decided to make a change. Now, my biggest gripe with people being like, ketogenic diets are stupid, or like, oh, Weight Watchers is blah, 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 is it makes the person who's made a huge effort to try something new feel like an idiot for trying, and then they won't try again. Whereas if you approach it in a different way, you say like, that's amazing, like, you've lost 5 pounds doing keto, but did you know that actually you could eat this other stuff? The reason it's working is a calorie deficit, and that you could do it in a much less restrictive way, and maybe you'd want to try that, like, maybe I could help you try that, rather than, that's so stupid, and then they feel like an idiot, and they don't really understand why you're saying it's stupid, because most people can't explain why. Like,
yeah, that's the thing.
Most personal
100%.
trainers can't explain why ketogenic diets don't work, or like maybe
that's the thing that really annoys me.
Yeah, that they can't explain. If say I went back to them and said, oh, but if you keep insulin low, then you're not going to reduce. Or if I put the fact to them, oh, but insulin reduces fat burning, then they can't argue back because they don't understand it well enough that actually that's an acute phase, that after food, yes, that is important. They don't understand that that's a good thing, that insulin is there to maintain blood glucose levels. Why would you want to be breaking down more energy stores when there's a sign that there's already enough energy there? And then they don't understand that even despite that fact, you can't store calories that aren't there. But if you could explain that better, then you wouldn't have to say to someone, oh, ketogenic diet's stupid or low carb diets are stupid. I can't really understand why, but they are, because I read it on the internet. Someone else said it.
Yeah, like it's just, I hate when people sort of, you're going to hate on something, but you don't understand the nuance with it. It's like people do it to bodybuilding all the time. They'll be like, oh, bodybuilders, they're so unhealthy, so bad for you. Like, oh, all their joints are messed up. And then you go look at someone like Steve Hall. Like, okay, is he unhealthy? Fuck no. Like, it's just kind of ridiculous. It's like, really? Like, okay, maybe if we look at like Ronnie Coleman, maybe that wasn't the most healthy lifestyle. But that is not all bodybuilders. Like, it's just like, come on. There's some really stupid people who do keto, but there's some really smart people. Same with vegan, whatever. Like, literally, that's the thing. Like, it just depends how you do it. And like, a lot of these things just work, and then it's not bad just because it's not calories in, calories out, or if IAF or IM or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of comes back to that question about which camp am I in, or which approach do I take, is that I will, like, you know, I might have some clients do intermittent fasting. I might have them do the 5-2 diet. I might have them go low carb because it works better for them. But I'll always make sure they understand why it's working better for them. And that actually if I told them, right, you're not eating after dinner, you're not eating after 8 p.m. or whatever, it's not because calories magically store after that time and that they're more, food is more caloric in the evening. It's because that's when they tend to overeat, and I want to change the behaviors around their food. And that actually, you know, if one night you got home late or you did want a snack after, it wouldn't be the worst thing. It doesn't mean you've completely ruined your diet, but understand, you know, the why behind these recommendations.
And that's the cool thing. It's like, once you understand that, like, once people know that there's nuance and like everything works, like, there's pretty much nothing in fitness that you can say blanket statement that it's bad or that it's good. Like, everything needs context, and that's the cool thing. It's like, there's a lot of different ways to do this thing. Yes. And it's like, for a lot of people,
but sorry,
everything can work.
Yeah, you're completely right, but it's also why people don't like the sort of evidence-based approach, because people love absolutes. They want to know that, oh, if they don't eat like carbs, then they won't store fat. Or it's just as simple as one rule. They don't want to know anything else. They don't want to know that actually, oh, you could have some, or you could do this, or there's so many ways to do it, or actually you can eat kind of whatever you want as long as you hit your numbers and stay within your calories, and there's so much flexibility you could do. They don't really want that. They want a meal plan to stick to. They want absolutes. And eventually they'll like maybe want to learn more about things and have that flexible approach. But initially people want that quick fix. That's why sort of like juice cleanses are so popular, or, you know, these sort of fad diets are so popular.
It's definitely the painful thing with evidence-based fitness. It's like, we're all sort of, do you know Ryan Solomon? I had a great conversation with him a while ago on sort of like, okay, literally, if we can figure out how to market evidence-based fitness, it will hopefully explode. Yeah. And like, you look at someone like Jeff Nappard, fantastic like example of it. It's like, obviously it can be marketable. And I think you do a great example of it as well. Because, for instance, in like a lot of people from evidence-based fitness, we will caption it like it's for someone who's researching it, or caption it like, a lot of us do it terribly, and it's like because I think we want to sound smart to our colleagues or to everyone else in evidence-based fitness, but then it's like, why don't we just say how to lose body fat, and then actually talk about the specifics within that, and that's the cool thing. Is there anything you sort of found has been quite useful in terms of marketing for evidence-based fitness?
Oh, I don't know, you know. I don't know. I'm not very good at marketing.
Well, I think you seem to have a good approach, because it seems to be as though you'll get the science, like you'll chuck the science in there, but it's not the first thing you see. So it's like there'll be a good lead, and then that will send them down, and it's like you explain it at the right level, and I think it's something that I need to learn more how to do, because it's a very hard thing to do, I think. And did that sort of come naturally to you, with sort of explaining it at the right level? Because I think for me it's so hard.
Yeah, definitely not. I used to go pitch way above where it should be, but I would always have like a take home. So even if I got really involved in the sciencey stuff, and actually I think it was just more because of that's what I was reading, that's what I was interested in, and I wouldn't change what I did, but I'd always have a take home. So often the take home would be, this has no application at all. It's just an interesting study on like cells, basically. But yeah, like I think, I mean, thank you for saying that, because one of the things that I would really like to be good at is like science communication, and something that I'm passionate out with fitness as well. So a lot of what I communicate is fitness, fat loss, health, but really I enjoy science and many other like aspects, and I would love to be good at communicating that, and I think that has mainly come from watching other people do it very well, and seeing, like, picking up tips from them and seeing what works well and what I've found like resonates with me when other people speak, and how they present things. So that's probably been my biggest influence.
Yeah. I think it's hard to do it once you become educated, because it's like, oh shit, now you don't know what the person who doesn't know wants to hear.
Yeah, you have to stay...
what they would Google.
Yeah, exactly. You have to stay grounded. And I think that's one thing that helps me, is that I like to think, at least I sort of straddle these two worlds where, you know, I do read quite in-depth research, and I also, like, at least I was surrounded by like very intelligent academics, but I always coached as well. And like I run female fat loss programs, so I get like complete newbies every month coming in, and they all, obviously you're answering the same type of questions, but sometimes you can get caught up in like the evidence-based world and your peers and stuff, and think, oh well, everybody knows what calories are now, everyone knows what a macro is, but they don't. You know, some people still want to know the basics, and I still get questions on my Instagram like, oh, that was really interesting, but what actually is, like, what is a macro? And I'm like, oh, right, like I've maybe pitched this a bit too high. And I think that as well, just being open to feedback and taking on feedback, and actually asking for feedback as well, of did everyone understand this? Like, or does it not make much sense? Or I think using analogies really helps as well.
100%. Yeah. I think that's something that's quite powerful. It's like if you give someone an analogy and apply it to anything else, and sort of say, okay, that's cool. I mean, you can't give an analogy for an essay at university, but like, or maybe you can, but it's just, you know, you can't answer a question like that. And it's like, but with a human being, it works pretty well. Yeah, so like it seems to sort of give a little...
One that I used that I'd stolen from Dr. Giles Yeo, who's a geneticist, was like talking about fat cells like balloons that inflate and like uninflate or whatever, but you've got a set amount of these fat cells, and when you take in too much energy, they inflate and they're bigger, and then when you diet, they become smaller. And like that sort of was a really easy way for people to think about fat. And also, again, it helps to take away that emotion, because you've got a load of balloons and they're quite inflated, we can deflate them if that's what we want to do. So I like little analogies like that.
And I think especially like that's something I like to become better at as well, sort of taking the emotions out of it. So I think for me it's easy, because that's like, I like numbers, I like sort of just going and doing it, and there's never been any like mental health issues for me personally around this whole thing, and like it hasn't been too much of an emotional thing. It's just sort of something that I just fell in love with, so it just worked. But then I want to understand, with someone else, they're scared of it, they're sort of struggling, and they're sort of figuring out, oh shit, like that's scary. Oh, I feel like this is the hardest thing I've ever done. And that's the kind of thing that I want to learn to understand, because I think there's always, like, pretty much everyone who does this is going to find something extremely hard. And I would love to learn how to either take the emotions out of it and show them it's just a logical process, we're just following this, or whatever works for the individual, I'm assuming, because it's like some person might like the logical approach, some person might like to feel like they're battling, whatever. It's like, that's the thing. That's the cool thing. When with everyone, it's like it's so difficult because everyone's different and they all want different approaches.
Yeah,
So,
and that's the other thing though, like as much as I said like I will change my approach to the individual, I'll also refer out if I don't think my approach is going to work best for them. So now I won't take on competition prep clients because I don't have time to take them on. So I would always refer those out. But also you end up attracting, like no one's going to come and work with me after watching my videos who doesn't really enjoy like learning and science and stuff. Like you attract the people that are like, oh, I like that approach, I like that mindset, I like how she's described that. And so
100%.
you attract your clients and then you end up not really having to change too much to suit them. And I guess it is a bit different at the start when you're just trying to work with as many people as possible and get as much experience as possible. But then I guess when you're attracting your own clients, like they do tend to gravitate towards the approach you already give out. So
yeah, like when I picked Steve, it was like a no-brainer. Like it was just obvious. Like I looked at any other coach and I was like, no chance. And then it just seems to fit very well. And I feel like that's most people's experience. So they just see someone's content, they listen to them talk, and you're like, wow, that is spot on.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was like the nuance, that everything is grey. There's a lot of different things that can work. What are the most important things that we should actually focus on, not the minutiae that don't work? So like that's the cool thing that was cool for me. But
yeah,
we'll finish up with one more question.
Sorry, just to add on that, like I'm sure you'll like work with Steve for a long time, and I think that's something that's really important as well. And the results that I get that are best are from the clients that I work with for a long time, and that's partly because you really get to know them and he'll get to know what works for you as an individual. And if you now went and started with a new coach, it would take you that period of time again for them to start to get to know you.
It's sort of like a warm-up
period. Completely. And
it's like now we're really getting running and it's like everything's just flowing. And he knows what exercises work for me because that was sort of a big deal, trying to figure out what worked because I have scoliosis. So it's like a lot of my physiology is very messed up. It's very difficult, like can't squat, can't deadlift, all these different things. And then it's like there was so much setup. And now, like I don't even track macros before this. I just sort of guesstimated and ate a lot of food because I was like hard gainer, ate a lot of food, and that was cool for me. That worked. And then I was like, shit, what do I do now? And now that sort of helped me transition into that. And it's sort of like a lot of setup of we're not making progress for the first few weeks, but we're figuring things out. And these setups have to occur. It's like you're you're re-aiming the bow or whatever.
Yeah.
If you're an arrow, I guess.
And I guess any plan that you start with a coach is a bit of a blueprint. Like, this is what I think will probably work. But let's be honest, like, your calorie allowance is a complete estimate. We have to see how that's going to work. And then we're probably going to have to change that. It's very unlikely you're just going to hit that on the head. So, yeah, it always changes. And, like, with injuries or different training styles and things.
Yeah, and I think it pretty much... I can imagine once I start coaching, it'll literally never get boring because it's like you're talking to a human being, and it's just the kind of thing where that never gets boring because especially when you get into this, it's like fitness seems like the kind of thing where you just love it if you love it, and then you do forever pretty much. Like I can't see many times when people have sort of been like, "Ah, fuck this, fitness is boring now," because it just seems so fundamental. But yeah, there is one more thing I'd like to touch on. Let me know how you feel about this question. It's a bit of a weird one, but it's something that I've been quite interested in recently. Talked about it last episode with Steve, and I think it's something I want to investigate more with people and have more people sort of talk about it, especially as online coaches, because it seems to be quite. It seems like it would be quite common. Have you had any sort of experiences in regards to being an online coach and just sort of having a sort of social isolation sort of feeling? Because, like, for instance, as someone who works online and sort of is in that, like, I guess, Gary Vee stage of, like, just grind 24/7, set up your entrepreneurial business, blah, blah, blah. Was there any sort of times or periods where, as an entrepreneur or as a fitness professional online coach, did you ever find that you just felt socially isolated or felt like, shit, I'm not talking to any human beings, or I feel like it is me against the world, or was there anything like that where you sort of had those sort of feelings? Because it seems relatively Like, this is the environment that just perpetuates that.
Oh, yeah. I would agree with that. Definitely resonates with me. Like, I think it is hard. It's hard being self-employed, full stop. It's hard being self-employed online and trying to grow something online because, yeah, you're right. Like, maybe you do, you know, you're speaking to loads of people online, but you're speaking to them about their problems and trying to help them fix their problems, which is, like, obviously is your job. But yeah, there'll be days where like it gets to the evening and I'm like, I've not spoken to anyone like in real life today. So it is strange, and like I do miss like social interaction, but it's also something you can work around. Like I noticed that, so now I make an effort to go and see people during the day, or to you know, if I'm like, my social time now is gym time, so I'll always try and like have a training partner for the gym, so there's a bit of like actually speaking to someone. Or in the evenings, I'll make an effort to try and finish by a reasonable time so I can go and see mates in the evening or have dinner with someone in the evening. So there are things you can do. And actually one of the huge things for me is I have a number of business partners for like different things that I do. And the support that I get from them, like even without really giving it sometimes, you know, just like knowing that you're working as part of a team is really nice. And also doing the podcast. So I've got my own podcast with two guys, and they've literally turned into like my best mates now. And it's so nice to like chat to them for like a couple of hours a week. And so there's loads of things that you can do to stop yourself feeling isolated if you are. But I do think, it is definitely something you can struggle with, and you can just... But I think that's the same with everything. Like someone put a quote up the other day, and it was talking about mental health, really. And it was saying you've not got time to work on your mental health is like driving a car and saying I've not got time to fill up with fuel. And I thought that was quite a good like analogy. Like, okay, there's always more work you could be doing. Like there's literally a never-ending list of work I could be doing. But you have to at some point say, do you know what? For today, that's enough. And a good way, I think, to do that is to like write a list of things you want to do that day that have to be done that day. And once that's done, you're like, right, today is done. Like I come back to that tomorrow, take some time off, go see your mates, go do whatever. Like make sure you make time for yourself as well, because you will burn out.
100%. And I think it's like that again is a spectrum. Like for me, I would say the last year I was in too much of like, oh no, don't become a workaholic, shit. And then I sort of tried to low down the workload a little bit. And the year before that, it was pure workaholic. So it's like, that's a massive thing as well, figuring out where the hell you sit on that. Like anyone who does anything relatively entrepreneurial or whatever, or just does a lot of work and is ambitious, you're going to figure out that at some point you're probably going to be a workaholic. At some point you're going to not want to do any work.
Yeah, so. I think as well, like, sometimes I think it goes too far the other way and people are like, no, do you know what, like, you need to take more rest, you need, like, it's really important to work on your mental health and blah, 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 you don't want to work too much. Like, actually, there is a time and a place for doing a lot of work. And I think sort of this, 100%. Like, when you're starting out in business, if you're starting a business, you will not have good work-life balance. Like, you shouldn't be having it. No. And actually, there's such a funny... I was on a live with one of my friends, and she's a bodybuilder, and someone had asked her how she maintains like life balance while she preps, and she's just so like snappy, just like, you don't have life balance while you prep, like as in why, like that's not why you're prepping for a bodybuilding show. Like there is no balance there. That's not the point of it. And I kind of feel the same a bit for business. Like when you're starting a business, do you honestly think you're going to have good life balance if you're trying to grow a successful business? No, you're not.
No chance.
And you're right, you do go through periods like, honestly, for about 3 or 4 years, and I think it's because I quit my PhD. I started a PhD and then I quit. And at that point, I was like, if I don't make my own business work, like if I don't make it worth dropping out of that to do this, then I'm really going to hate myself for this. So I worked like my ass off for like 3 years. I didn't go on holiday. I didn't have good life balance. And it probably did affect many of my relationships. But now I'm in a place where I can have better life balance because I have a good, you know, like I've got a sustainable business. And I'm always looking to grow that. Definitely nowhere near done. But in the last year, like I've I went to Australia at the start of the year. I'm just about to go to Bali. Like, I've done so much more traveling, seen so much more of my friends and family. But I wouldn't be in the position I'm in now had I not sacrificed for a couple of years before. So I don't know if I completely agree with always having life balance. And maybe, maybe if you take a big enough average, that will average out as life balance.
But that's the thing. I think it's important to note. It's like, if you want anything extraordinary, you got to do what extraordinary people do. It's sort of not putting it that way, but it's like I definitely agree. It's like, for instance, for the next 4 weeks, I'm not going to socialize. Exams start in 5 weeks. I'm not going to do jack shit. I'm literally like, this is the closest thing to socializing that I'm going to do. Maybe, no, I literally don't think I'll do anything. Like gymming, I guess gymming. But like for me, that's just like, I just gym. Like maybe I'll talk to 2 people. Yeah. But it's like, and that's just the reality of it. It's like, okay, do you want to start a podcast, finish your undergraduate degree, and do a bunch of other shit while working and not going in debt? Cool. Probably work for a lot. Like, it is what it is. And that's the thing. And you want to compete in bodybuilding? Cool, yeah. Don't slack on your nutrition either while doing this. It's like, and it's a fun thing. But I think people of a young age should carry a heavy burden. Because I think a lot of people just say, no, I'm probably just going to chill. Like, I'm just going to do this thing that I kind of like. And then people will take a degree they don't like, a job they don't like, and then they'll just do it. And then they'll think, oh, shit, I'm stuck here. But I'm like, you kind of not if you put in a ton of hours for a while. Like,
or people,
3 or 4 years.
People don't want to hear that, do they? They want to look at, like, someone who's already successful and be like, oh, look, they only work 4 hours a day or whatever. And you're like, yeah, because they worked, like, 24 hours a day for the last 5 years, and now they can chill out. But they don't want to see, like, all the hard work that's gone in behind that.
That's the thing. It's like, I think it's with anything, right? It's like with fitness, with work, it's like people want the easy way, or they want to say, nah, like, he did it because genetics, and he did it because money from his parents, and he did it because X, Y, and Z. It's like there's just all these different things where it's like, okay, well, how did they actually do it? Like,
I love the genetics ones because it's always like, oh my god, look at her, she's got such, like, great genetics. I wish I just looked like that. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, where is she right now? At the gym. Like, where do you see her every single morning when telling her she's got good genetics? 6 o'clock in the morning at the gym, putting in hard work. Like, she's the hardest working person in this gym. It's not the genetics. Maybe they like planted the seed, but she's like grown that plant by herself. Yeah, exactly. Like, if you look at my case, it's like, when I started out, I wasn't already jacked. Like, I was tiny. And then I just gymmed for 3 years, didn't miss a single session, burned myself into the ground by gymming too much, ate literally the most disgusting things because I just needed the calories. I would make shakes with olive oil every fucking day. It's like every goddamn day. I would stuff myself with food. People like eating. I don't anymore. It's like, I hate it now. I mean, now it's getting slightly better, but it's like, that's the thing. It's like, with any of this, like, for me, the transformation was it's quite a good showy transformation. But it's like, there's a reason it was so drastic. That was not puberty. Yeah. Like, that's the thing. Like, fucking hell. It's like, people look at any influence and they'll have an excuse. It's like, bro, no, like, there's a million reasons why someone made it, and it's not just genetics. Like, maybe it's a tiny part to get to the world stage. Like, you look at someone like Alberto Nunez, it's like, yeah, cool, he might have decent genetics, but it's like, he's also, like, literally done everything right. So, you know, like, he invested for the first 4 years of his bodybuilding career. He didn't cut at all. He just gained muscle. You know, that probably correlates to something. Yeah. Like, that's the thing. And yeah, you know what? Genetics play a role, but hard work plays a bigger role.
Yeah. And it's just, people don't want to... It's not a nice thing to hear if you don't like going to the gym, but it's like... People, like, I didn't like the gym at the start, but now I do. Like, it's just like, I think a lot of people just learn to love it because you realize the good bits about it. Like, all you feel is pain at the start because it's just, oh, this is terrible, I don't like doing this.
Yeah, but then like, also the start's amazing because you get these ridiculous newbie gains that, like, you would 100%. Literally kill for now. So enjoy the start while it lasts as well.
And it's crazy how, I remember when I started, it was like, I just realized one day I wanted to gain muscle, so I was like, okay. I tried a few things. Like I tried doing push-ups in my room and shit. That never worked, and I just started gymming, and I just ate everything in sight. And it was like, holy shit, this works. So then I just did it for the next 3 years. It was cool. It was like, I didn't think it could work, and I had that whole mentality of like, I am skinny. And then I did that, and I was like, oh, I don't have much muscle, so it's like, I'm going to gain more. And that's the cool thing. Once you realize it's possible, you can genuinely take your physique to some pretty cool places, or whatever, like your health. It's like you can, it's pretty, like, if you put in the work, literally, most things are pretty doable. Not like anything's possible, but most things are kind of in reach.
Yeah, so, especially if you've got that growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset, and you're not. And it works for everything. You know, a lot of people are like, "Oh, I am not good at maths." It's like, that's not a fixed thing.
How much
like,
maths have you done?
You can be good at maths if you want to, but if it's not a priority to you, that's also fine. But it's not something that you are good at or not innately. And the other thing with that is mindset, which I think a lot of people again sort of think, "Oh, you've got a really good mindset. You're lucky." It's not
That's the
luck.
thing. So what?
Yeah, it's conscious effort, and actually you have to make a conscious effort, probably like hundreds of times a day, to be like, I'm not going to let that get me down. I'm going to choose to be positive about this.
Yes.
I'm
going to do this extra piece of work that I don't have to do. I could go to bed right now. I could go play video games, but I'm going to stay up and edit a podcast. Like, you know, that's the thing. But yeah, I think nowadays it's a very common theme of like people don't want to hear a certain thing, but it is the way it is. Like, it's not the easy way, but it is the best way, and it is the hardest way, but it is the only way, pretty much. So, you know, it is what it is. You cannot fake it till you make it and things like this. It just doesn't work. But yeah, we'll finish off there. Where can people find you? Everything ESG, the podcast, your Instagram, everything. Okay,
the podcast is called Fitness Unfiltered. It's on iTunes and all the other places as well. My Instagram is at ESGfitness. My Facebook is Emma Story Gordon Fitness. If you want to contact me, those are probably the best places. I do have a website, www.esgfitness.co.uk. It's not very good, but those are probably the best places to catch me.
Cool. Yeah, and I think even for the podcast, it's something that I'm hoping to listen to soon, because they just did a very interesting interview with Jordan Peters.
You will love the Jordan Peters.
Very, very cool.
Oh my god, it was such a good
I am
one.
hyped for that.
There's 2 parts.
Because it seems as though
it's so good.
No one's had him on, and then you guys seem to have done it well. So very excited to listen to that.
It will blow your mind. It will not be what you expected. I can guarantee you that.
Hey guys, thank you very much for listening to this episode. I hope you give us a review or you really enjoyed the episode. Let me know any feedback. I'm always open to any criticism, anything like that. Reach out to me on Instagram at James_Walsham, or if you'd like to follow my business account, follow at the Hypertrophy Hub. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you would like to help the show, there's a list of ways to do so in the show notes, but if you're wondering how, the best thing to do is just give us a review on iTunes, or just let me know how the show can be improved. Thank you very much.